I perform so many actions during the day, so many thoughts, so many words, so many gestures. What's motivating all of that activity? What's driving me to act? Or specifically, what's driving me to perform the particular actions that I do? Why do I think the way I do, speak and form the way I do? And what do I hope to attain through all that activity? When I look very honestly at the answer, I realize we are all remarkably similar under the skin. All of that activity is motivated by the desire, the hunger to be of value. And so often seeking that value outside, through the busyness, the doingness, through the acquisition of property or people, through my position relative to others, even looking for approval in the eyes of others. Perhaps the essence of spirituality is to bring value home, to return my personal sense of value to where it truly belongs, the self. Looking inwards, deep inside, beneath all the conditions, desires, expectations, beneath all the experiences I've accumulated just at pure self. Life itself. Just by existing, I am of value. Life is of value, but there's also quality of life, and that also resides within me, within the human spirit. Experiencing those qualities within myself, they can never be found outside. Peace, patience, pure-heartedness, they can only be found within, like different facets of a diamond, a living diamond. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, and welcome to Interview with the Raj Yogi. Tonight's topic is a living diamond, and it's partially connected to last week's topic in terms of physical versus spiritual restoration. Because a few weeks ago, for those who are in regular Raj Yoga sessions, uh, we're hearing about that because we're living jewels, and of course, this is all metaphorical, uh, those qualities, the weaknesses, all of those flaws can be removed. And I found that very significant. But today, again, this aspect about being a diamond, a living diamond, but I was thinking about quality and don't want to get analytical, but I was really, there's just a different feeling when you hear diamond versus emerald or sapphire. And, but even in science, there's something unique in terms of the properties of a diamond. But I know also in the commentary about the different facets, and of course, it could be any jewel, but perhaps maybe we can just start with just the significance of a diamond, and not for this to be like a theoretical interview, but practically, how is that really meaningful for souls in terms of Raja Yoga?
Option D. So yeah, in general, we just sometimes just use the word jewel, ratan, just jewel to capture uh, the value of the self. And I think this idea of diamond, there's, as you said, many metaphorical or significant aspects of a diamond that transfer well. But also, I was just thinking now that, you know, uh, a diamond is a gift we often give to someone whom we deeply, deeply love. And this idea of being so precious is really, I think, connected to that particular jewel. It's a deep hunger in the human spirit and every human soul to be considered very special and valuable. And I think that's really captured in the idea of a diamond. But yes, just jewel.
You were suddenly, when you were sharing, I was reminded of this question you often had asked in Raja Yoga. I don't know if you remember, and I don't know, maybe it was you, but it was how long can we go without food? And those online, you can reflect on that. And then you would ask, how long can we go without water? So I give souls a moment to reflect on that. And the next question you ask, how long can you go without air, oxygen? Right? And then the last question was, we would ask is, how long can you go without value? And the answers are quite interesting. Oh, I think a while. So I want to hear your answer about that and elaborate, because it's very, to me, extremely eye-opening.
Yeah. So the idea is that we look at more and more subtle sustenance as we go from food, weeks, water, days, air, maybe minutes or seconds. So we know that the next one, the most subtle form of sustenance, love and regard, it's going to be shorter than seconds. So we actually can't go any time at all without love and regard. So if we aren't getting the real stuff, which comes from inside actually, then we will go for the artificial, which comes from outside. Um, and it leads to quite a web of complications when we try and get that sustenance from outside. And the reason we say it's artificial, it's temporal. Everything outside is temporal. So it's a very fragile form of personal value. If it's within me, it will travel with me. So, and it really is the cornerstone of quality of life. So, getting that love and regard, somehow figuring out the method or opening up to the method of how to cultivate that inside.
When you had asked that question many years ago, I really had to reflect on that, because some will probably still say, no, I had to deal with things by myself for a long time. But I realized that there's a lot under the aspect of love and regard and inner value. At least I was realizing that progress. You're sitting at a traffic light and you're just wanting to inch forward. And some would actually end up taking a different route to feel like there's progress. But then there was a lot of things in terms of meaning and purpose. And I've met some souls when I was in the hospital where something which we take for granted, he could not taste anything when he eats. And that was a huge source of depression in his life. And that's a very physical thing still. But so, in terms of this topic about living jewel, living diamond, this aspect of value, I find really interesting because sometimes spirituality is seen as quite dry and inaccessible. And I've had this experience when I first came in the study about you hear the word soul, and somehow you're supposed to connect it with value. And sometimes it seems like a very hard leap for souls to see how that's even relevant.
Yeah, for some, I think they kind of have been doing that sort of inner reflection. So they might be more primed to understand the significance. And for others, it might be having to go through that journey. But what's being suggested, and these are very gross examples, so you'll have to extrapolate that this can get quite subtle. But, to be valued for, one of those big, what we call P's for the package. I'm in the body, all the different aspects of the body. To think I am the body is one thing, but then to invest my source of value in the body or the image is another. There's many, many aspects to that. So that's one area. Another one is people or relationships. The third is possessions, what I have. And the fourth, of course, is position, status, roles. So those really make up our life. And when people sit to meditate, it becomes pretty clear how entangled it's become. They say, I can't meditate. I keep thinking about work, or I keep thinking about this relationship, or I keep worrying about, the finances. Or so these are all these P's that really our sense of self is so entangled in. To say I'm a soul liberates me from those P's without loss. So that's the big, even today, the lesson we get tomorrow goes deeply into all this. That's the big thing is okay, I'm going to pull out my investments from all of those P's. I'm no longer going to take my value from the body or the people or the possessions or the position of status because they're temporal. What is left? Well, it seems to be the self. But if I'm not those P's, then what am I? Like, what does the self mean? I've always thought the self were those P's. So now I need to know the self. I am the living being. I'm me, if you will, and starting to experience. So this is all, it's quite a world that's included in saying I'm a soul. And if we look at all of these attempts to reconcile, etc., based on culture, gender, it's just creating more boxes. We just don't know where to deposit the self. So we create more and more boxes, and it gets further and further away.
One of the other things about why I was called to this aspect of living diamond, and I did specifically choose diamond for a reason, I do remember learning in organic chemistry class. There's something very unique in terms of the composition of a diamond. And it's different from the composition of graphite, which is also carbon, because for graphite, there are actually sheets, layers of, carbon, the way it's connected. But specifically for a diamond, the carbon is actually structured in a certain way, the molecule is. And so those I've found, because diamonds are used, on the, they coat drills with them. Even like what creates a diamond, this intense pressure. And I was thinking about like heat. Sometimes some have heard that term, the fire of yoga, and then there's Bikram yoga out there. So what is this heat thing? Because sometimes souls actually get quite intense and maybe in a violent way internally, maybe even externally, trying to change when it comes to hear the word yoga. So what is this heat? What's happening again? How is this relevant to Raj Yoga and value?
Yeah, so physically, when I become very attached to these fragile forms of, we'll call it artificial value, it creates a lot of stress in the soul because we're not sure if that's going to change or if we'll lose it. And that's one kind of heat, um, very stressful. That's a form of pressure on the soul. And we talk about the pressure to create a diamond. There's another kind of heat, or the heat of yoga, if you will, the fire of yoga, that's actually very cooling. And so I was thinking a lot today because we were asked to look at, what is creating obstacles inside the self, the word defects, but not allowing me to operate with my highest potential. What is that? And actually, one I think that's common for many is being able to accept love from God. Um, Great challenge for souls. I mean, many attest to having love for God, but accepting love from God. This is the fire of yoga. It's a very cooling, calming, the stress, the repentance, the anguish inside the soul is actually cooled. So it's a fire that puts out other fires. It's a bit odd, I know, but in the sense that it has the power to do that. So we call it the fire because it can melt all that anguish in the soul. It's not hot, it's just the fire that can end those other fires going on in the soul. But to be able to accept it is a challenge sometimes for souls.
It's interesting when you're mentioning, I was prompted again thinking about last week's session about physical versus spiritual restoration in terms of change within the self. Because oftentimes you hear souls say, well, I'm always angry. There's no way I can change, or no, I always think this way. I always react this way. So how does that work? Like love from God, or and experiencing myself to be so. How can these defects, these flaws, be removed? Because oftentimes there's a question that souls ask. I've asked that question: how can I return to innocence again? How can I get my integrity back again? So what exactly is happening like that? I can actually change, because there's a lot of things out there right now, and souls really are trying really hard to change. But still, when it comes to some like really deep reactions, souls are definitely frustrated.
I think this is really where Raj Yoga shines. It looks at a cyclical concept of our journey that we are destined to return. So things we yearn for because we've experienced it, and yet we're still destined to return. I've also had the fortune, I think you have as well, to look at souls who are going through end of life. They're about to leave the body. And it's so fascinating what happens, things that we don't think are possible. the transformation. I'm not saying for all, but I've noticed it's kind of a pattern that when they're in that situation where they have to let go, they seem to get closer to their starting point. There's quite a bit of transformation, definitely a feeling of what's important, what's not important, letting go of things that we never would think we'd be able to let go of. Um, so it's possible, and it's actually suggested that it's destined, which is very reassuring, that we'll be able to master these things that seem really quite fantastical, such as, I've thought of myself as a body so long. I mean, how am I? And it seems like it's so challenging to think of myself, experience myself as a subtle being, but it's almost just knowing it's destined actually supports me in being able to move towards it.
When you're talking about the cyclical aspect of time, and I was remembering again when it was beautiful you shared, because I was like, what is it about diamond? It's just unique. And when you use the word precious, and that feels like, even though souls may not realize it, that value is so important. And so, connecting value to purity, perhaps this is the last question, because purity, for some of you see a little child, it's easy to use that word, but for many, they hear purity, and how can they relate to that in terms of value?
There's a constellation of words that are really the same thing, facets of the same thing: pure, real, authentic, beautiful. Now, if I'm an advertiser and I want to be able to increase what I charge for my product, all I need to do is slap one of those words onto the package. 100% pure orange juice, real extract, beautiful, makes one beautiful, real, authentic, sincere. These kinds of words, just intuitively, we know they're worth more. So we're talking about non-living examples, but imagine if it also applied to the living. I am authentic. I am internally, I am beautiful. I am pure of heart. I am real. My sense of value just starts to increase. My feelings towards myself start to elevate. So they don't just apply to non living things. It actually is even more important for the living being.
If anything, we hope that inspires souls to take a Raja Yoga session, or refresh, or any of the drop-in sessions that we have. So we'll have a short reflection right now.
I thought you were going to segue. I was like, segue, and you're going to announce all the things. All right. Okay.
I almost
Hang on to that thought. Most important relationship I have isn't with my family. It's not even with God. It's with myself. This relationship with the self colors all the other relationships, even the one with God. With respect to myself, do I respect myself for the right reasons? Not because of what the body looks like, or who I know, or what I have, or what I do, not my skills or talents, none of it. I just respect myself as a natural state of being for no real reason. I respect myself. Am I at peace with myself? Do I automatically forgive myself when a mistake is made? All of these questions around the relationship with myself and how does the relationship with myself change when I consider myself to be a soul, a spiritual being? How does that affect my relationship with myself? This is what Raj Yoga asks, what I experiment with, considering myself to be a soul and seeing how that changes the feelings I have towards myself. And that is meditation. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti, thank you for joining with us this evening. Just a couple of sessions coming up. So save the date for Friday, June 21st, which is United Nations has declared it as International Day of Yoga. And so even though the theme is women empowerment, that's what the United Nations has declared, we really look at the feminine qualities of the soul. So there is on-site meditation at the Inner Peace Center at 6:30 to 7:30 on Friday, and also online as well in English. So again, BK Calendar, YouTube, to really explore that experience of the soft power, the feminine qualities of the soul. We also have Learn About Meditation offer at the Academy happening on Saturday, and that's June 22nd. And again, the time is 12:15 to 1:30. I can't seem to remember that every single time. So please visit our website as well as YouTube BK Calgary for other sessions as well. So thank you for joining with us this evening. Om Shanti.